So the W in CROWE stands for where. And it's one of the biggest things that I think beginning improv students have a problem with, because what you're asking them to do is pretend everything. And a lot of times that includes physical objects. But you're not just asking students to do that. You're also asking veteran players to do that. And the reason that you're asking veteran players to do that is because you're asking the audience to believe it. So unlike, sketch comedy, which has props and costumes and makeup, we're asking people to come in and believe this reality for this 5-minute span. So just envision me as a 95-year-old woman. Okay, well, the biggest way to do that is to pretend to be like a 95-year-old woman. So I would, maybe hunch over a little bit and just kind of shrink physically a little bit, and maybe change my voice to, so I'm a little older, Well, okay. All we're doing is the same thing with our physical environment. So every interaction you've ever had with any person has taken place someplace. So if we're setting up a scene that two people who know each other are going to be, that has to take place someplace. And if it's in an auto body shop, well, then there's going to be car parts around. There's going to be, the car that I'm working on. If I'm a veterinarian, there might be animals around. If I'm in the jungle, it's going to be, obviously just like a veterinarian's office, with lots of animals around. What you need to do then is give the audience some semblance that, yeah, we are in this other environment. And that could just be like a living room. So how do you convey to someone that you're in a living room? Well, what do you have in your living room right now? In my living room right now, I have some ottomans and a coffee table. Oh, a coffee table. Are there any cups on it? More than likely there are. Are they half empty, or are they half empty, or are they half full? They're the same thing. Those are all things. If there's a half full cup of coffee on this coffee table, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to treat it like it's half full. It's definitely not empty. But if I bring it up to my mouth too quick, oh, I got some coffee on me and now I've spilled it. All these are just little things that make the audience go, I totally believe that guy has a cup of coffee in his hand right now. And if someone's, I'm going to set my cup of coffee down. And if someone, has a pen and a paper and they sign something, the audience can see those things. Like I'm actually writing. I'm not just miming physicality. And if I drop that, then the audience notices it. And again, I'm betraying the reality that I've built for the audience, and I don't want to do that, right? So we'll force players to create a where, and then make them practice within the boundaries of that where. So this coffee table's here. We don't want people to walk through the coffee table, right? Because there's a cup of coffee on it, and if that really happened, maybe they trip over it, and that would be hilarious in a scene, right? Like I just walk through, I think I'm going to walk through your table, you think I'm going to walk through your table, and then all of a sudden I trip and fall over it, and I knock your coffee down, and I'm very apologetic. Now the audience, not only does the audience know that you guys are on the same page, the audience really sees the table now, because it's not just imaginary, somebody tripped over it.
Okay, the concept of where. The audience starts watching a scene with a blank canvas. And the more clearly we can define the place where the scene is taking place, then the audience has a much clearer picture of what's going on. So we do this with space work, where we use mime techniques to define glasses, a much different experience to have a hot cup of coffee as opposed to a beer, or we can define it with, oh, what a lovely stamp collection. You can define it that way, and the more you are specific in your defining of the where, the more clear the picture for the audience. It's a very different experience to walk into St. Paul's Cathedral for the first time and be in awe of the majesty, and to walk into a public restroom or a rest area on the highway. So you have to keep track of your partner very closely, because they might create something that you need to use. It's a very magical thing when somebody establishes a cup of, or let's say a wine bottle in the first 30 seconds of the scene, and they set it down on an imaginary shelf over here, and 2 minutes later somebody comes over without commenting on it and takes a drink out of that wine bottle and puts it back where it came from. It's one of the first things that when people come to class, it's like I'm drinking out of a bottle and I'm talking and it's gone and it's back, and so it's just practice. You learn that you have to keep track of things.
Gosh, Danny, I'm sure glad we made it out alive.
Yeah, I really don't like the haunted house, but we got through the first part. Now we're here in the second part.